Hello, everybody, with this new episode for the Inner Camino podcast, self-reflection podcast. And it is for pilgrims, by pilgrims. And I'm very pleased to have now in this episode Ben from America. I met him last year, so I'm very pleased. And Ben, could you introduce yourself a bit?
Yes, I'm Father Ben Cameron. I'm a Catholic priest from the United States. I live in Kentucky with a group called the Fathers of Mercy. So I'm a missionary Catholic priest. And last year, in the fall of 2025, I had the honor of doing the Camino from Roncesvalles to Santiago. 40 days on the Camino, 40 incredibly blessed days on the Camino as a pilgrim. And so in my normal life, I'm a missionary priest. I travel all over the United States, Canada, Australia, preaching in different churches. So I'm always kind of on the giving end, if you will. And on the Camino, I was there to really be on the receiving end, and to experience and just to walk with others and to really be able to listen to others and to listen to the voice of God within and as the encounters that God brought into my life.
Yeah. So, may I ask how old you are?
Yes, I'm 56 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you're a youngster. I'm 67.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ben, I'm really pleased because we met last year on the Camino, and we had a very nice lunch together. You did a pilgrim mass in English, so I could, for the first time, understand what was going on,
Right.
because otherwise this is Spanish. So I have really dear memories about our meeting last year, and I'm really happy that you want to join the podcast. And I meet at this moment a lot of pilgrims, and I invite them all to actually actively join and not only think about it but do it. And you do it, and this is so important. Otherwise, we cannot share stories.
Right.
If we leave it to other people, we need to do it ourselves. So I'm very, very pleased. And I'm also very curious what you want to share about your Camino.
So for me, one of the things that just stuck out to me is how many times I had what some people would consider a random encounter, but I don't consider them to be random encounters at all. I think each encounter is, as you would say, the Camino provides. I would say God provides through the Camino, where I would meet somebody and just kind of unexpected, not foreseeing anything, not planning anything, but just kind of being open to encounters with other people. For example, when you and I met, had my shortest day on the Camino. I was in hospital to Orbigo. I was standing on the bridge and you come walking along and I just said hello.
Yeah,
And we began a conversation that, and a friendship,
yeah,
just there on the bridge in Hospital de Orbigo.
yeah,
And, why was I on that bridge at that moment? And when you were crossing the bridge at that moment? And why did I say hello? And it was but it was meant to be. So
yeah,
I wanted to share several stories of the kind of encounter and just kind of the working of for me, the hand of God or the finger of God in the Camino. Very early on in my Camino, I think I was still in Navarra, actually. Um, I had met some people in this one little town. I can't remember the name of the town. Actually, it might have been Estella. And there was this one gal I'd kind of seen but didn't actually meet her. And the next day I'm walking and we're near each other and she just says, "Hey, are you Father Ben? Are you that priest that I've been hearing about?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So she said, "Yeah, I need to talk to you about something." And her name's Jill. I'm going to say that with her. Each of the person I'm sharing, they gave me permission to share with the story in their first name.
okay,
And she's from California, and she was not Catholic, but she had been in Rome and had a troublesome encounter with a priest. And it really wasn't where the priest did anything wrong. It was miscommunication. He didn't speak English. She didn't speak Italian. And, she did something. She really shouldn't have, but she didn't know any better. He tried to say something, but they couldn't understand each other. So it was just kind of traumatic. But she just needed to be able to talk. And so we ended up walking together and talking for several hours. And I just really got to listen and to let her share what was on her heart, what was troubling her. And it really wasn't about having a perfect answer. It was about being a listener for me, and listening to what was in her heart and being able to share with her. And we struck up a friendship. And we basically, some days, I mean, part of the Camino, she was ahead of me, and part of it I caught up with her, and we ended up meeting up again in Santiago. And a whole group of us, half the people I met on the Camino spoke English, so it was
Yeah.
really pretty incredible. We had our kind of community. We could all talk. And whether we're from English-speaking countries or like yourself, Europeans that speak English as a second or third language. But it was a beautiful encounter, and a friendship started. But it was just this type thing where I didn't plan it, and I don't think she planned it, but God kind of brought us together on the path, and it really was a beautiful encounter. Um,
And do you know what that meeting meant for her?
I think it meant a lot because she shared with other people along the way, and she shared with me later on about how it really helped her to process what she had been through, and just kind of helped kind of remove some obstacles toward Catholicism that she had because of that encounter that wasn't, it was unpleasant. And like I said, it wasn't even like the priest did anything wrong or she intentionally did anything. It was just they couldn't communicate.
Yeah.
And but so she was able to share with me, and so it helped. And I communicated with her the other day, and she said, it really kind of helped her whole view toward Catholicism. And
Yeah.
she's strongly Christian in a different denomination, but it was a good encounter. So
Yeah.
that was one. Another one that was amazing. I was in the little town of Viana.
Yeah.
This is near Pamplona, and Viana has a running of the bulls. It was a young bulls. And so I've been there and experienced that. And I planned to the next day, kind of shorter day than normal. My average days were 13, 14 miles. This was going to be a little shorter. So I thought, I'll get a little later start. Maybe I'll leave around 9. But then I was ready at 8. And I said, I'm just going to go ahead and go. And as I had walked no more than a block, and this woman named Marissa comes out of an albergue, and we began walking. I just said, we're saying, I said, hello, how are you doing? And we get talking. And she told me she had planned to leave early because she had a longer walk that day and she overslept. She was going to
Uh-huh.
leave at like 6 in the morning, but she
Yeah.
overslept. So she ended up leaving the exact same time I was leaving.
Yeah.
And she's from Brazil, but she had been living in Australia. And she said she's going to be on your podcast. So she's going to be on with you in the near future.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Then I think I know who it is. Yeah. What
yeah,
was the name again?
Marissa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
I met her
so
also. Insane story, by the way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we start, we're just walking and talking, and somewhere along the way, she opens up that she had had some just really difficult things in her youth, that it's some very bad experiences. I'll let her and her own share what she wants to share. But she just was able to just share with me that the kind of things that she had been through and the struggles that she had had and how they had affected her. And she was doing the Camino, and she was working through the Camino. For her was part of her healing journey, that she was having that time to reflect and to walk and to process, her experiences and work on her healing. And anyway, it was just, we were only actually walking together for maybe 4 hours. And there were a couple other men who at different points were with us. One guy from France that I intersected with several times, he said, just walking with you guys and listening to you two talk just really helped me, which is kind of neat. he wasn't even really, he was just hearing, and he was
Yeah.
said it helped him. Um, but we walked together till we had a lunch, and there was another guy with us, an American fellow, and then the two of them were walking on, and I already had my place. I was staying in the next town. I think it might have been Legrano where I stopped. Um, but later on, I mean, so she and I, we kept in contact with just with through WhatsApp, and she told me, she said that I was, she grew up in Brazil. She grew up Catholic. She said I was the first Catholic priest she was able to open up with
Yeah.
about what had happened to her in her childhood, in her youth. And it was helpful for her, and but I didn't plan this meeting, and
Oh,
I didn't have an agenda. I just said good morning.
yeah.
Somebody comes out on Bergie and they're walking along with me, and I just said good morning. And
Yeah.
that began a conversation that ended up being helpful to her.
Yeah.
Um,
So, and did she also mention why she could open up to you and not to the other Catholic priest? Do you
she
have
she
an
didn't
idea?
actually she didn't actually say. I don't know, maybe I think part of it is that a lot of time when people go to a priest, they're going for direct counsel, or they're going for an appointment about a particular thing, and it's like there's a limited time. We've got this meeting. You asked for this. It's not necessarily where you've got an extended amount of time to just listen.
Yeah.
So I know when I as a priest hear confessions, there's a limited amount of time, because usually there's a line of people who want to see me, and they're there to confess their sins, receive forgiveness, and, go on with their life. But this was the type thing where we were walking together for about 4 hours. And so there wasn't any press for time. It was
Yeah.
just that we were able to be together.
So
And
connect and building trust that way.
yes. Yeah, so yeah, there's much deeper ability to connect when there's time. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the beautiful things with the Camino is you have time on your
Yeah.
hands. You're not we're so busy in our life with rushing to this and to that and to work and to sports and to get my kid to the dance lesson, or to whatever it is, or for me as a priest, from this appointment to this appointment to all these different things. There's not that many opportunities to just be with somebody for hours.
Yeah.
And the Camino provides that possibility of deep connection.
Yeah.
And I think that was the real key, is that there was the time and we had that chance to make deep connection too. So that she could open her heart and just really share what was burdening her, and
Yeah.
her journey of healing and her seeking of healing. And I just thought that was beautiful for me. The Camino brought opportunities for me to really be present to people in ways that other ways of life and even my normal ministry don't usually give me that opportunity. I mean,
Yeah.
I also do retreats. I do post-abortion healing retreats. I spend a whole weekend with a crew of people, a team of people, doing a retreat for 4 to 8 people, and so I have it and things like that. But very seldom do I have that time to just really be present.
Yeah.
And the Camino provides that kind of opportunity. And so that was another one. I'd like to share a third story. It was closer to Leon. I don't remember the name of the town. It was a couple days before we got to Leon. And I'm walking out of the town and passed a lady. And then there was some historical thing I wanted to see. So I stopped off to see that. And then I was circling back and she was in front of me again. So I was walking faster, and I started to pass her. And she said, "Are you Father Ben that I've been hearing about?" I don't know. I guess I had a reputation, because people kept, but I didn't hide the fact I was a priest. I
Yeah.
wasn't wearing clericals, but I had my name on my backpack and American flags so people could know that I spoke English, and I
Yeah.
wasn't hiding anything.
Yeah.
So because I figure, let, however God wants to use this, I'm I am who I am, and I'm going to let people know if they want to talk to me, they can. So anyway, she asked, and I said, "Yeah, I'm Father Ben." And so I slowed down and just started walking with her. Well, we ended up walking together that whole day, and then in Leon, we had a day off the same day. We ended up having a long lunch together, and kept in contact. And anyway, this lady, her name's Julie, and she's a minister in London. So she's a Protestant minister,
Okay.
and an absolutely beautiful person, a beautiful soul, and just loves our Lord Jesus Christ with all her heart. And I, as a priest, I mean, my most ministers I know, I mean, priests are all men, and most Protestant ministers I know are men. So she's like probably the first woman minister that I actually spent significant time with.
Yeah.
But it was profound for me to walk with somebody that neither of us were really looking for anything in particular, but just to have real conversation about God, about our faith, about the what the Camino meant to us, what we were hoping for in the Camino, and just kind of a deep personal sharing.
Yeah.
Um, but I just felt like it was really meant to be. And I had published a book, and she's writing a book, and so I shared with her about my book, and she will let me know when hers gets done. No,
Yeah.
but it was just that type thing where for me it was like I in some ways I was being ministered to by her, and in other ways, I was ministering to her but we were like brother and sister in Christ, just able to really take time together. And just a really funny little thing, I invited her when we were in Leon to have lunch, and we're at this little place right in the square, right across catty corner to the cathedral in Leon. You can probably picture it, off to the left from if you came out the main doors. And we have a pizza salad and a pizza and a beer and all this stuff, and having this great conversation. And the guy comes out and says, "Would you like some dessert?" And I'm like, "What do you have?" And he said, "Pistachio cheesecake." And she said, "You're speaking to me, your eyes just lit up. I knew you were going to get that pistachio cheesecake." And it was awesome, but
Yeah.
it was one of those times that was like, again, able to really spend time,
Yeah.
not be in a hurry. I think I met a number of people on the Camino who I thought were too much in a hurry. They were they were rushing to get as many miles in as possible every day. And they were leaving early, and they were arriving late, and it was like powering through. But I don't think you get as much out of the Camino when you're powering through. Um, to really enter into the Camino, you have to take your time,
Yeah.
and you have to
And
be
and
willing to
I
stop.
yeah, and it's also in the as we speak. Um, I'm now entering the fifth week of the Inner Camino house. So there's a lot of people here. I don't know how many, but perhaps more than 1,000. And this is one of the subjects which also pops up when we talk with each other. Yeah, that some people are like, yeah, making a marathon out of it and walking really fast. And I really I'm a strong believer in that everybody walks his own Camino, and then when they walk it so fast, then they most of them when I speak people also when they also had walked fast and now they walk slowly, that they started to realize that they are rushing through life, not being aware that they are rushing through life.
Right,
And because they were running on the Camino or very fast, that inkling could arise that because then you arrived at Santiago, and some of them they say, "What actually did I do?" Because
right.
it's passing away very quickly, and then but that gives them then the inkling and the insight for, oh wow, perhaps I need to slow down a little bit and
Yeah,
get more time. And then the next time when they walk, then they really can sink in that space and give themselves the opportunity to not the opportunity, but they had it before, but the space to slow down.
Right.
And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really important. And Europeans can easily, it's a few hours to get to Spain and do part of the
yeah,
Camino. Those of us who come from the United States or Canada or Australia, New Zealand, other parts of the world, it's more of a rare opportunity unless we're really blessed, to have
yeah,
be able to take 6 or 8 weeks off of work and go. And I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity to walk the entire Camino again. I was on a sabbatical. I had 28 years of priestly ministry, and then I got a 12-week sabbatical, and the Camino was
yeah, yeah,
part of that. You know, so especially if people are not having that opportunity to do it every year or whatever, I think people need to understand early on that slow down. Don't be in a hurry
yeah,
because it's it's in fact for me one of the best things about the Camino was I slowed down to the pace that people lived at for most of human history.
yeah,
I slowed down to the pace that you walk on your own 2 feet,
yeah,
and that really was beneficial to me because I drive all over the United States. I fly for places I can't drive. And a lot of my life, running from this place to this place to this place. And to just slow down for 6 weeks and to walk and to listen and take days where I was really me and the Lord. There was nobody else really. I wasn't really having many conversations. But other days, being open to somebody walks up and a conversation starts, you know, having that openness to, what is the day going to provide? And for those who believe, what is God going to provide? For those who, maybe don't think of it in terms of God, what is the Camino going to provide? And having this openness just to walk and just to um, have an open heart and an open mind to encounter people. And I met so many people who don't have the same faith or same experience that I do, but I was able to really be present to people and really have a heart to listen to people and not to think that I had to have an answer for people, but just to be present and to be a friend, to
yeah,
those who wanted it.
yeah. So you now talked about some events where you met people and walked together with them. Did
Mhm.
you also had the opportunity to walk days on your own?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a number of times where I was really walking on my own, and yeah, people would come by, they'd pass me, I'd say hello. If I passed somebody, I'd say hello. And
And how
um,
how was that for you? The difference?
I thought each one had its benefits. I mean, there
Yeah.
were days where it was like it really was meant I was meant to have more quiet time and to be on my own, and there were days where I was meant to encounter somebody.
Mhm.
And some encounters were brief. Some encounters I walked with somebody for 20 or 30 minutes and then they
Yeah.
were going on a little faster pace than me, or I stopped for a cup of tea and
Yeah.
they didn't want to stop, and they continued on. Um, but just taking it each moment at a time,
Yeah.
and so yeah, there were days where I was mostly walking alone, and it was great, and I needed it those days. But there
Yeah.
there were other times where I was meant to meet somebody and to spend time with somebody. And it wasn't like we're necessarily even talking the whole time. Sometimes we're just walking together in companionship and, conversation kind of off and on.
Yeah. So what I noticed myself, because I walked 4 times and all the time the Camino Frances. And last year I was able to walk from Saint Jean Pied de Port to Santiago because I was retired.
Mhm.
And 3 times before I walked from Osobrero, which is 160 kilometers. I did it 2 times with two of my kids. And I married on the Camino and walked from the monasteries San Anton, Samos, sorry. And what I noticed in the 3 times that I did a shorter parts that I had magical experiences. I had Camino provide moments that help comes out of nowhere in a way that you cannot imagine, and also with a result which is mind blowing and deep conversations with people, revelations, all that kind of stuff was all there in the 3 times that I walked for 14 or 15 days. What I noticed when I was walking last year, and especially as of Logroño, they officially the Meseta starts from Burgos till Lyon, but secretly it starts already in Logroño. Yeah, because then the scenery changes and it becomes
Mhm.
like that till Lyon. And walking there on my own, that was a totally different dimension that I encountered in the other ones. And especially, and at a certain time, I asked pilgrims when they wanted to walk with me in the morning. Then I said, no, I just really want to be with myself and walk alone. And what I noticed myself is that nearly every day there were thematics from the past popping up, sometimes making me angry, sometimes making me sad, all kind of stuff, revelations, really deep insights that where I was pounding on for years. And then that happened in these silent moments for myself. And finally, when I arrived in Santiago, I can now conclude that that part made a big change in the person who I am now. And so, when I tell this, does that resonate with you? Do you what is
Mhm.
your experiences when you were walking alone?
Yeah, it does resonate. I didn't really have a lot of turmoil or anything to work through on the Camino. I mean, I met a lot of people who were working through grief or working through trauma, but I didn't really have a lot. I kind of worked through grief in my life. I'd lost my brother 8 years before. I'd lost my father 4 years before, but I'd had time to work on those. And I've been blessed. I really didn't have much trauma in my life. So it wasn't that type of thing, but it was, still, I think we need silence. And a lot of our world, we don't have silence. I mean, I even notice when I walk in the country in Kentucky, and I live 10 miles outside of the city of Bowling Green. So, I mean, I live in the country. But even walking down a country road, we don't really have silence because there's the power lines. And if you can even hear the buzz of the electric lines, and so we don't really get much opportunity for real silence. And I think that the human soul, the human psyche actually needs silence. And whether that silence is there for the opportunity to think about things in the past or to work through things that we've been through or to settle down our worries about the future. A lot of time, we're listening to books, we're listening to music, and I do that when I'm walking in the country on boring roads. I listen to books a lot, but I think so many times we're not having silence to really know ourselves at a deep level and to be able to listen for the voice of God at that deep level. And the Camino provides an opportunity for that you just don't have in many other places. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
in the United States you walk the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail or something like that. But those are
it's
different
different.
because I walked part of the Appalachian Trail when I was young, and I
Yeah,
was on the Camino for a shorter Camino in 2015. I did 9 days. I did Leon to Astorga and then Sarria to Santiago, and that whetted my appetite for more, for doing the whole thing. But in on when you're doing like the Appalachian Trail, you're literally having to carry everything. You're carrying your housing essentially with your tent and your bedding. You're having to carry out your food, the ability to make fire, to cook your food. The Camino, you can be simpler because you don't have to carry all that.
yeah,
Um, but I think a lot of people look on the Camino as like kind of a neat hiking, walking vacation, and everything's provided. And they're not really thinking about the interior work of the Camino. But the Camino in its roots is a pilgrimage, and
Yeah.
it's a pilgrimage to the tomb of an apostle, St. James the Apostle. And so it's this thing that for 1200 years people have walked to Santiago, and it's to pray and to listen and to encounter the divine. And it's only in silence that we can really hear the voice of God. And so even though I wasn't like trying to work through grief or trauma or something, I was still really wanting to have that more silence to listen
Yeah.
that I don't get as much in my normal life. And that's one of the blessings of the Camino is we have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. You said just a little bit before, you said the noise of God, and later the voice of God. And when I talk here with fellow pilgrims, we have the we often talk about the chatter in our brain. There's always
Yes.
a lot of chattering going on. That's the human brain trying to help you. And then when there is silence, and I call this I'm out of the way. Yeah, so and then you connect to something at a very deep source. I'm Catholic. We talked about it, and
Mhm.
people also know that I've a little bit troublesome relationship with Catholic Church as well. So, but still, I don't deny that, and I respect it. There's no judgment in that aspect. But I call it a little bit different. This is the deep knowing, for instance, it was one of the names, because there's so much knowledge flowing through that space, which I don't have. It is just not there. I only can reach that part when the chattering in my brain silenced down.
Right.
I took last year also my iPhone earplugs with me, and I searched for podcasts and books I wanted to listen. I didn't. I was just there with me and myself, with
Mhm.
my tinnitus sounding in my ear. That was
Right.
the only sound. And then yourself. And then you finally start to fall through the chatter of your brain into the space of unconditional love. That is how I experienced it. And
Yeah.
that you really can share that with yourself, with God, with the deep knowing, whatever you call it. But there is something there which don't judge about
Right.
what you did and loves unconditionally. And every time like now, I can get really emotional about that because there's no, in that sense, no expectation. It is just there with you. Yeah, and that's also I don't know if we talked about it before. Last year when I was walking, I had a wave of creativity flowing through me, and one of these things caused me sitting down writing a song. And I never in my life wrote any songs, and I'm not a musician. But in that song, in the third strophe, I wrote down laughter in three languages, all meaning the same. I see you. I'm with you. You can rest your name. And that is really what I feel, where I get that deep connection with God, with that what is in, yeah, creating everything what we are experiencing here. And it is breathtaking.
Mhm.
And Ben, also when we played a song here in the Camino house, people start crying again and again and again. And I feel in the space, in the room, there's so much love there available at that moment. It is overwhelming, really,
Right. Right.
really. So what I'm also very curious about is, you walk now the Camino, and you had these encounters and the time and the space to be together with pilgrims and with yourself, walking alone. Do you feel or know that it has an effect on your daily life?
Yeah, it does. That memory of having the silence and of being able to be present to people, not always having to have an answer, but being more of a listener. That was something that really has affected me, and going forward. because a lot of time as a priest, it's kind of like, I'm supposed to preach, I'm supposed to counsel, I'm supposed to kind of have the answers. And we can kind of get in the mode of just like giving the answers, but realizing through the Camino that sometimes I need to just really sit and receive what somebody else is saying and listen to, well, some things, the things that are beyond the words, the things that are within their heart that they're trying to express, that they're having trouble getting the words for it. And in order to do that, you have to just really be present to somebody. And you can't necessarily have an agenda of, I'm going to solve this thing. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. No,
in the United States, there's the classic kind of little almost meme type thing of the man wants to solve, the wife has a problem and the man wants to solve it, and she doesn't want him to solve it. She just wants him to listen. And both have a role. I mean, men generally are problem solvers, but there's times where sometimes we need to just listen, you
yeah,
know, and not have to have an answer, but just to listen. And sometimes in the listening, we encounter a person at a deeper level, and then the words we do say are more impactful because we were able to listen more and listen more deeply to what the person was saying and to what they're trying to say. Because so often in our society today, people are talking past each other. We
yeah.
see it in the politics big time, and people are talking past each other. They're not actually listening to each other.
No,
And because they're not actually listening to each other, they never find any common ground from which to work at eventually coming to commonalities and solutions to problems because they're
yeah,
just shouting at each other.
yeah.
So the Camino is a blessing for kind of like a personal reset. I wanted a couple of things relating to that. There was an English woman I met. She was walking, her husband walked with her for a few days, but apparently she walks a different part of the Camino every year and has
Huh,
walked different Caminos, but has been doing it for years. But she said for her, the first third of the Camino, you're focused on the physical and
yeah,
your body hurts,
yeah,
and the second is the mental, and you're worrying about, okay, where am I going to stay and all that, which I didn't have because I prearranged where I was staying and everything. But still, your mind is going a lot.
yeah,
And then in the last third is where you really kind of get to the depth, which
yeah,
she called the spiritual part of the Camino. But if we're intentional about what we're doing with the Camino and why we're doing the Camino, we can not be so focused on just the physical and even the mental, and we can go more quickly to or integrate the spiritual, the inner part much quicker and throughout the Camino. The other thing is when I did the Camino the first time, I noticed that the last segment from Sarria to Santiago, there were so many more people that the almost like the culture of the Camino changed because you
yeah,
had, we walked 200 people walked into Sarria and 2,000 people walked out, and so it was really hard to um, kind of for the people who are just joining at that last part to really experience that silence part of the Camino. And God bless them. I'm glad people make the Camino and do it, even if they only have a week, they do the shorter. But I would really recommend people who are thinking about doing the Camino, who are watching this or listening to this podcast, to at least try to do part of that Camino that's before Saria, because
yeah,
you have an opportunity to kind of experience what the Camino is like and the kind of culture of the Camino, because it is kind of like its own society in a certain sense. There's
yeah,
this culture of the Camino, and in that way, not just experiencing that where there's the vast crowds and the young people who are listening to their rap music on the boom boxes while they're walking,
yeah,
which is not what the Camino is like as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, ideally, if people can do, 6 weeks to go from Saint Jean, or I was supposed to start in Saint Jean, historical problem, end up starting at Roncesvalles. It was God's providence for me, because the day I would have been coming down to Roncesvalles was a horrible day, and a lot of people got hurt. And I have a bad ankle. I was spared. I mean, I was
Yeah.
spared of a really rough day of walking,
Yeah.
Um, so it was providential for me. But if people can only do it 2 weeks or something, not necessarily doing just the end, taking it another part so you can kind of get that real spirit and the inner journey of the Camino, which you can
Yeah.
do
And I
more where
think,
there's more
yeah, I,
silence.
yeah, I think when they start from Burgos or Logroño, then you are in that space. And
Hmm.
there's also the Meseta, which officially starts in Burgos and runs to Leon, which I just mentioned, secretly starts already in Logroño because the scenery is already changing
Right.
there. And it is also a part where people are afraid of, and they
Yeah.
bypass it by train and bus.
Yeah.
So and again, everybody walks his own Camino, and so there is a reason, and we don't understand why they do that. But for me, the most valuable part was that part. And as of Leon, it was more for me like celebrating life, have a lot of fun together with people, and a total different atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's one thing before I forget it. You also said that as a priest, it is much more that there's an expectation that you come with answers and solutions in whatever form. And when you now are connecting in listening and giving that space, I'm curious. Are the you touched it a little bit, but I just want to clarify it a little bit for me and for the listener. Are the answers you are giving then from a different, is that different, or are more or less the same answers you give when you are totally in the priest role and do that, or is there a difference in the answer you get?
A lot of it depends. I mean, if somebody asks me a moral issue that is clear in scripture and in, what the Catholic faith and Christianity has always held, my answer is not going to be different than it was. How I get there with people and the time I take to really listen to them, to how to approach them, is going to be different.
Yeah.
But a lot of things are not necessarily the black and white of morally right or morally wrong. It's
Yeah.
more like, what's the best way for me to, approach this or that, or, that type of thing, where there's a lot more, well, let's like really listen to what's going on in your heart, why is this important to you? So there's more of a, um as I'm listening, I'm encouraging them to look deeper at what's going on within, rather than just, okay, here's your question, here's your 2-minute answer, and we move on. but
Yeah.
but if somebody asks me, is it okay for me to, cheat on my wife? No. It's not.
Yeah.
But, well, why are you, I might ask them, tell me a little bit more about what's been going on in your marriage that you're even asking this question,
Yeah.
and is there something you can be looking more deeply at your marriage, and getting to the root of what's going on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so yes and no, depending on the kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Okay.
But
Yeah. And yeah, before we close this episode, I always ask the question. In the meantime, it becomes always the question: is there something you really want to tell to your fellow pilgrims or the people who are listening to the podcast and thinking about walking the Camino? Is there something you say, this is really something which is important, I want to share outside of the experience you already shared?
no, mainly just that if you're going to walk the Camino, take your time. It's not a race. It's a journey. And the journey itself is worthwhile. It's not
Yeah.
just about getting there to the end. It's the path itself matters.
Yeah.
And um, if I can go to actually the Lord of the Rings, um, Bilbo had a thing about, every path you step out of your home, out of your front door, and every path connects to every other path, and you never know where you're going to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the journey itself matters, and the
Yeah.
walking. So don't rush to get to the goal. Take the time and treasure the journey
Yeah.
and make the space for silence and make the space for the encounters that are going to happen on the Camino. If
Yeah.
you make the space for it, you're going to have a deeper experience on the
Yeah.
Camino than if you're driven by an agenda.
Yeah. And also, when you do that, you practice that while walking the Camino, you are practicing your brain to make space in the Camino after the Camino.
Yes.
Because then you train your brain to make that space, and it is easier to do it afterwards also. And
Yeah.
then you take the Camino more home. And also my experience and what I heard from other fellow pilgrims as well, because when you take that vibe space with you in your daily life and you start doing that more and more, people resonate on that as well. So you become more and more a shining light in your environment without doing anything special, just being creating more space for yourself
Yeah.
and automatically for other people. And that is when you are silent and take more time and you create that space.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Ben, I'm very happy that we have this talk with each other. I don't want to call it an interview, but because it wasn't.
No, it's a
And
conversation.
it's just a talk with two pilgrims and sharing. And I really hope that when other people listen to this podcast, they actively press on the share button on the website and fill in the names and their email address so we have a talk. Because the idea from the podcast is that we share the stories and you can listen every day to it, to a story. So you bring the Camino to your daily life and start radiating, because it will have an impact on yourself. I am an example of that. Now I'm living on the Camino, which
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
could never imagine that would happen. And sharing so much beautiful time with people, and they open their hearts, and it is so beautiful when this could be a medium where we can bring this widespread out of the north of Spain, but also at your local place where you live. So if you listen to this podcast, don't hesitate, because our instinct has the habit that if he smells change, he doesn't like that. And he has a very good tool to keep you at the same place, and that is letting you forget that you want to do something. And then you think, oh, I will hit the button tomorrow, but you will not do it because your instinct is in the way. So please join so we can make this an alive podcast for as many pilgrims as we can. So really, really thank you for joining the podcast.
Yeah,
And
you're welcome.
yeah, it will be online. And yeah, thank you very much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you, Danny. Great
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
All right. God bless. Bye.
Whether you're walking the Camino right now, or preparing for it, or perhaps you are back home and maybe even suffering from PCS, the post-Camino syndrome, I hope that this podcast inspires you. And if so, do not keep it to yourself. Share it. When you share this podcast, you actively help spread the skill of self-reflection. Every person who learns the skill of self-reflection begins to see people differently. You may still question what somebody does, but the judgment about their intentions start to disappear. And you are entering the realm of non-judgment. And non-judgment is experienced as unconditional love. This is how real change begins. With you, the people around you, your city, your province, your country, your continent, and eventually the world. That is why actively spreading the skill of self-reflection, like an unstoppable virus, is so important. So please do not just listen, but act on this call and share it with as many people and on as many platforms as you can today. For new episodes, go to www.innercaminohouse.com. Select the podcast page in the menu. There you can subscribe to the podcast notifications. You will also find a link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and bon Camino.